One of the great privileges as president-elect of SAGES is to introduce the current president. And so it's my great privilege to introduce our SAGES president and my good friend, Dr. Gerald Freed. If I can have the slides, please. Dr. Freed is the Edward W. Archibald Professor and Chair of the Department of Surgery at McGill University in Montreal, a position he's held since 2009. He's a graduate of McGill University, where he received both his undergraduate and MD degrees. He then trained in general surgery at the Canadian MGH, Montreal General Hospital, that is. During residency, he did a GI fellowship at Ohio State, and after residency, spent a year in GI surgery research with Dr. James Thompson at the University of Texas Medical Branch in Galveston, Texas, and then returned to McGill, where he's been on the faculty ever since. He's been professor of surgery since 1994 and has held a number of key leadership positions in the department at McGill that include program director, chair of surgical education, and the Steinberg-Bernstein Chair of Minimally Invasive Surgery and Innovation. Dr. Freed in 1990 did the first Lap Chole in Montreal and became a member of SAGES in 1998. He began working in the field of surgical education and simulation and developed the McGill Inanimate Surgical Trainer for Endoscopic and Laparoscopic Surgery, or MISTELS system, that became the basis for the skills component of FLS. He carried out numerous validation and assessment studies of FLS and is considered one of the godfathers of FLS. It's this scientific foundation of FLS that has been a major factor in its adoption and mandate by the American Board of Surgery for all graduating general surgery residents in the U.S. He's held many leadership positions in SAGES that include chair of the FLS committee, SAGES treasurer, first vice president, has been on the board of governors since 2002, and in 2011 received the SAGES Distinguished Service Award for significant long-term educational, research, clinical and/or technological contribution to the field of surgical endoscopy. In the introduction for the SAGES Distinguished Service Award, it was said that he is world acclaimed for his work in surgical education and metrics of technical skills assessment. He's brought to SAGES and surgery a sense of purpose, as well as the enthusiasm and talent to do whatever has to be done to make surgery better and patients safer. And he's helped catapult SAGES to a different and higher place in the surgical heavens. Dr. Freed has received many teaching awards that include the McGill Honor List for Excellence in Education, and in 2008, a National Innovation in Education Award from the Canadian Faculties of Medicine, and has held many positions of surgical leadership in North America, including President of the Central Surgical Association and of CAGS, and he's on the Board of Regents of the ACS, and is on the Board of Trustees of the SSAT, the ASE, and CAGS. Dr. Freed has over 160 peer-reviewed publications and numerous reviews and book chapters, and over the last decade and a half has mentored 45 research and clinical fellows, several of whom now hold leadership positions within SAGES, and he's built the McGill MIS Group into what is arguably the most scientifically productive MIS group in the world. But these accomplishments tell only part of the story, so let me take you back a few years. Jerry was born and raised in Montreal. Here, he's already showing the two-handed technique critical to a future surgical career. And at age 3, has already developed a keen eye and was taking aim at the future. And here he is at age 13, a handsome young man for sure, who was just coming of age and a very bright student who often helped others with their homework. Jerry loved sports growing up, playing tennis, baseball on a select youth team, no hockey? And skiing, showing the kind of excellent form that I can only dream about. After high school, he enrolled at McGill University, and it was during the registration line for classes that he met a young co-ed, Karen Russman, with whom he was immediately smitten. This picture is from a little bit later, but they were married in 1972 and will soon be celebrating their 42nd wedding anniversary. Here's Jerry with his infant son, Howard, but what's up with this Bob Dylan hairdo? I know it's the 80s, but still. He was a happy young father, shown here with his son. After residency, Jerry spent a year in GI surgery research with Dr. James Thompson. He's on the far right in the front line, in Galveston, Texas, but there was only one problem. There was no ice. So they had to trek up to Houston for the one public ice rink, perhaps in the entire state of Texas at that time. They soon returned to Montreal, and the family had grown by then to include daughter Kimberly. Outside of surgery, Jerry's continued to play sports, and he's apparently quite a tennis player. I think we would all acknowledge that's pretty good form on that serve. And this is something that he and Karen have done together. And they even managed to parlay this into a TV broadcast spot of a match at the Canadian Coupe. Now, despite the fact that there's no open water in Montreal 8 months out of the year, Jerry loves to swim, or perhaps I should say loves to float, or even hitch a ride when the opportunity arises. Most of you realize that Karen frequently accompanies Jerry to many of his surgical meetings. But I think somehow she must have missed this one. Or as they say in Quebec, ceci est l'avantage de parler français, n'est-ce pas? So Jerry kind of tried to lay a little low after this, here hiding behind a mask, but eventually the law caught up with him, and he was returned to Karen. Seriously, one of the things that Jerry and Karen love to do together is travel. And they've traveled the world together and have been pretty adventurous. Here in Thailand together on an elephant, but Karen decided smartly to let him ride the ox alone. And I don't know if you can read the shirt or not, but it says, "I'm having a Malox moment." Here they are at Giverny in France, in Monet's garden, and in Mykonos on the Greek islands on their 40th anniversary. Jerry has many other talents that you may not be aware of. He's a superb cook, and he is the resident Sage's sommelier but most importantly, he's a great family man. Here are his parents on the upper left, Sam and Pauline, Karen's parents. He's a great son-in-law with his daughter, son, daughter-in-law, Karen. Karen describes Jerry as a fantastic husband, a great dad, a wonderful son-in-law to her parents. And as a grandfather, he's bananas. And as far as professional accomplishments, she says he most loves teaching and mentoring and helping young people in their career development. He has a gift for connecting to people, is a great listener, and always has his door open. This is your SAGE's executive committee. We spend a lot of time together and have over the last several years and get to know each other very well. And I asked my fellow members of the SAGE's exec to describe Jerry, and this is in their own words. He's a charming, brilliant, and humble man who always puts others ahead of himself and relentlessly pursues novel endeavors for the benefit of SAGE's. He's a gracious, thoughtful, and unflappable surgeon and leader, a gentleman surgeon, an elegant president, calm, dignified, diplomatic, a strong leader with an excellent sense of humor. And he is a forceful, eloquent diplomat from whom I enjoy hearing the word "about." If surgery were a monarchy, Jerry wouldn't be king, but he would be its benevolent prince, for he's a prince of a man, ever the gentleman, rational in thought, reasoned in his speech, calm under pressure, and wise in deliberations on issues of critical importance to our society. For this and more, he is greatly admired among fellow surgeons and leaders in surgery throughout the world. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure to present to you the 31st President of SAGE's and our first Canadian SAGE's President, Dr. Gerald Freed.
Well, thank you so much, Mike. I would actually probably enjoyed listening to you expound for the whole time. It was a very, very generous introduction, and it truly gives me a deep understanding about myself. I also want to thank you personally for your wisdom and support throughout the year. I know SAGES will be in great hands under your leadership, and I have no conflicts with respect to this address. So giving a presidential address is a wonderful honor, but a daunting challenge. In preparation, most people review some of the highly regarded prior presentations and then select a theme for their talk. Some addresses set in place an action plan for the organization. Some reflect on the individual's lifetime work or passion. Some are historic, yet others are futuristic, and some are philosophical. When deciding on my approach, I first reflected on the unlikely journey that has brought me to this position. So I would like to tell you a personal story. I hope that it will interest most of you and perhaps even inspire a few. In the end, I will leave you with some messages that summarize the values that have guided me and served me well, and how my own personal values are so coherent and intersect with the culture of SAGES. The Society of American Gastrointestinal Surgeons, now called Gastrointestinal and Endoscopic Surgeons, was formed by a group of surgical innovators who saw the importance of endoscopy to the practice of surgery of the GI tract. The original members brought to the organization core values that have persisted to this day. I am sure that our founding fathers never considered the eventual growth of SAGES to more than 6,000 members and to be the largest and most influential GI surgical society in America. It is important to reflect on the core values that have steered SAGES to such success. What lessons can we learn as we face the future to ensure our continued remarkable progress? SAGES is a society, not an association. What is the difference? An association implies a common link among members. Society means more than that. It implies social interaction, relationships, synergy. The whole is more than a sum of its parts. It is a human connection. The spirit of SAGES is indelible, and its culture nourishes that interpersonal connection that not only brings its members together, but, like a magnet, attracts its members with a force. We live in a new world, connected electronically by zeros and ones. The digital world has connected us unlike ever before. It has taken away time zones and the barriers of distance. It allows us to communicate immediately and to store and track communications almost effortlessly. And of course, SAGES has embraced digital communications, and we continue to prioritize our budget and human resources to ensure we remain ahead of the curve. We have an amazing meeting app, hundreds of thousands of hits to our websites, over 3,000 followers on Twitter, and we've developed our own Facebook and other social media content. SAGES truly straddles both the digital and personal communication worlds. Now, I am not a Luddite. I have always been an early adopter of innovation. The point that I would like to emphasize is that the depth of a relationship done face-to-face is so much greater than one done exclusively digitally. Build a relationship in person, then maintain and even enhance it online. SAGES is an example of a particularly successful specialty society at a time when many others are suffering decreasing membership and decreasing attendance. 2,000 attendees have left their homes and work and flown to Salt Lake City to come to SAGES this year. What attracts someone like you to do that? What are you looking for in a specialty society and its annual meeting? Of course, it is a forum for presentation of ideas and for active learning. It is an interface between industry and medical professionals. But I believe that the primary reason most of you actually came to the meeting is to connect with your peers and to establish new relationships. As successful as our digital communication strategy has been, it should not come at the expense of in-person communications. This plan must reflect our core values of the organization. In-person communications allow you to build relationships quickly. They create impressions. They call out our emotions. They lead to friendships, ideas, and creativity. They challenge us and they motivate us. These interactions do not necessarily need to even be in meetings. They can occur over a cup of coffee, dinner or a drink, or at our iconic Friday night sing-off. You may think that opportunities occur by serendipity, by random chance. They do not. They occur by choice. For the next few minutes, I would like to reflect on the value of in-person communications and connections and the importance that these have played in my own career and development within SAGES. So I recognized quite early in my general surgery residency that I wanted to be a gastrointestinal surgeon. In my training program in those days, the mid to late 70s, no surgeons were doing GI endoscopy. We had no dedicated colorectal or foregut surgeons. But one of the great attributes of our training system at the time was an opportunity for one of our senior residents to do a clinical year away. The idea was to expand in an experience that was somewhat limited at McGill, and then to return as a chief resident with new skills that both benefit oneself personally, but also the program at large. Most of my predecessors at the time had elected to go to a busy trauma center, since violent or penetrating trauma was a rarity in Canada at the time. But I was looking in a different direction. Guided by Dr. Brian Lowry, a surgeon from Johns Hopkins who had done his PhD at McGill and with whom I had worked as a summer job, he subsequently moved to The Ohio State University. And also inspired by the charisma of Dr. Larry Carey, who was chair of surgery at Ohio State at the time and had recently visited McGill, I applied to spend my year away at OSU. This is a great picture of Dr. Carey in the middle, sandwiched between two other icons of Ohio State. In the foreground, Dr. Robert Zollinger, and in the background, head football coach Woody Hayes. My goal was to become proficient in GI endoscopy and to enhance my clinical training in complex gastrointestinal surgery. Interestingly, the gastroenterology medical group at McGill would not agree to train me in endoscopy. Thus, my only option to pursue this was to find training elsewhere. That year away was incredible for my professional development. As it happened, one GI fellow had to leave the fellowship in advance for personal reasons. So Chris Ellison and I each spent 6 months as a GI fellow and 6 months on the surgery service working with Dr. Carey and Dr. Robert Zollinger, Sr. I exceeded my expectations, returning to Montreal with the experience of having performed over 1,000 endoscopies, 200 esophageal physiology studies, and the wisdom attained by doing a large number of consultations on surgical patients from the perspective of the gastroenterologist. I honed my surgical skills and I became confident in my own abilities as a surgeon. But I also developed a network of close personal and professional friends who have remained friends and supported me to this day. My whole family are crazy Buckeye fans. And thanks to my predecessor as SAGES president, Scott Melvin, my son Howard and my wife Karen have had the true joy of joining me to return to Columbus for the epic Ohio State-Michigan football games on 2 occasions. In the lower right, you can see our good friends from Columbus, Eric and Judy Anderson. They were our adopted siblings there, and they taught us the Buckeye culture and traditions and made us feel so at home while we were away. We're delighted that Eric and Judy live in Salt Lake City and are here today to share in this moment with Karen and me. Well, armed with endoscopy skills and an appreciation of the essential role this technology could bring to the optimal practice of GI surgery, I returned to McGill as chief resident. One of my senior attendings, shown here, Larry Hampson, actually fought the political battles with GI, obtained endoscopy privileges, and allowed me to maintain my endoscopy skills in my chief year, and I owe him for that. Well, at this point, I realized that my next goal was to attain an academic faculty position, hopefully at McGill. I wanted to practice complex GI surgery. I knew I was well-trained clinically, but I really didn't have an academic focus and really have an understanding of how to achieve my goal. I had done my undergraduate degree in physiology, and I was interested in GI physiology, and at the time, the obvious areas to pursue were physiology of pancreatitis and stress ulcers. But I really didn't know much about how to pursue it and where to go for training. So I sought the advice of Dr. Ray Chu, who, although a cardiac surgeon in our department, was the person that I considered to be the most visionary and talented surgeon scientist. Ray's counsel was, as always, to the point and invaluable. He said, "Look not to the past nor to the present, but you have to look to the future when choosing a direction for research. You have to look for an emerging area." So together we poured through journals and society proceedings. Gastrointestinal hormones, that was it. It returned me to the excitement of the patients that I had seen at the bedside with Dr. Zollinger at OSU. The idea was further fueled by the recent Nobel Prize winners awarded in 1977, Rosalind Yalow, who developed a radioimmunoassay for peptide hormones and who I got to know, and Roger Guillemin and Andrew Chole for opening up the possibility of studying brain-gut peptide interactions. So, sponsored by a strong recommendation from my connection at OSU, Dr. Zollinger, I was able to be accepted into a highly competitive research lab of Dr. Thompson, who was chair of surgery, as Mike said, at the University of Texas Medical Branch. I left Galveston after 18 months with a real good understanding of research methodology, a CV that was swollen with 18 new publications, and a research award from the Royal College of Physicians and Surgeons of Canada. But more important than all that, I returned home with a true appreciation for the fundamental importance of research in surgery and how to lead a research enterprise on my own. Dr. Thompson was a mentor, a friend, and a tireless supporter for me, and he helped guide me through some difficult decisions later in my career. His philosophy, which I may have paraphrased or edited slightly over time, continues to be a beacon for me at each stage of my career. Without research, the surgery of today would be the same as the surgery of yesterday, and the surgery of tomorrow will be the surgery of today. This adage has truly influenced my thought processes throughout my career, and I think this could well serve as a motto for sages as we look at innovation. So I did return to McGill, to the job I had always coveted at the Montreal General Hospital. My goal was to confine myself to GI surgery with a strong endoscopy component. But it wasn't easy. Despite my training and strong letters of support by prominent gastroenterologists from OSU, I was devastated to learn that my request for privileges to do endoscopy was refused. It took a great deal of time and energy to go through the appeal process and finally have the university overrule the credentials committee at the hospital and give me credentials to do endoscopy. You can imagine this did not endear me to my peers, and for the next 7 years, I fought to build up a practice despite no referrals from local gastroenterologists. But I persisted. I was the first person in Canada to do PEGs, and I provided this service for an entire region. I learned to use a laser and developed a referral base for patients requiring esophageal and rectal tumor ablation and management of difficult bleeding problems. At the same time, I established my basic science lab, was funded by the Medical Research Council of Canada, and earned the privilege of supervising residents in their research. So it was around this time that I needed to make my first decisions about joining specialty societies, and I joined the obvious ones, the American College and CAGS, and soon thereafter the Central Surgical, a particular favorite among McGill surgeons. When it came to deciding on a GI surgical society, I sought the advice of Dr. Thompson. So he encouraged me to join the SSAT, an organization in which he was very active, as a great forum to present my basic science research work, and to join the ASGE to validate myself as an endoscopist in the eyes of my GI colleagues. He actually discouraged me from joining SAGES at the time. He was quite negative about this organization. His take on it was, it's just a surgical endoscopy society that can't compete with the SSAT in terms of science or reporting complex GI surgical outcomes, and it might actually antagonize my colleagues in gastroenterology. We'll get back to that. So on a wintry, cold Saturday in late 1989, my life changed forever. I was at the hospital and I was walking by the office of my chairman at the time, Dr. David Mulder, and noticed that the light was on, and I thought it was quiet on that Saturday, nothing going on in the OR, so I dropped in to say hello and find out why he was around. So he was working on a book with Professor Hans Treudel from Cologne, Germany, on surgical research, and they invited me to join them for lunch. Those of you that know Dr. Treudel know that he's a passionate man, and of course he spoke passionately about this new operation they had started doing in Germany called laparoscopic cholecystectomy. He said to me, and I remember this quote, "Jerry, I want you to come to Cologne, stay with me in my home, and I will teach you this new operation. I will make you a famous surgeon in Canada someday." I said I would like to do that, and true to his word, when he returned to Germany, Dr. Treudel communicated with me. We agreed on dates, and early in the spring of 1990, I went with a colleague of mine from the General, Dr. John Hinchy, to spend a week in Cologne. We saw 8 laparoscopic cholecystectomies and a laparoscopic appendectomy, returned to McGill, and convinced the hospital to purchase the required equipment, and they did it immediately. So we were offering lap choles to our community soon thereafter, and this is a picture taken during our first case. What you don't see is the horde of people outside in the hallway looking on other monitors strewn around the operating room corridor. Needless to say, like many in those heady days, my life changed dramatically. I was finally able to realize my goal of developing a comprehensive GI surgical practice, and the barriers in the Division of Gastroenterology magically melted away. I must thank my good friend Alan Barkin, who's to become Chief of Gastroenterology, for supporting me particularly well at that time with referrals, for advocating for my cross-appointment to their department, and for collaborating on me on some important research projects. From that moment on, I was challenged repeatedly with, "Can you do this procedure by laparoscopy?" I was doing gastrectomies for watermelon stomach, a disease I really hadn't heard about, thoracoscopic vagotomies for stomal ulcers in bariatric surgery patients. I was closing Hartmann's colostomies, repairing traumatic diaphragmatic hernias through the chest, doing pleurectomies and blebectomies for recurrent pneumothorax, and on and on. It was a time of magic. It was a time of great discovery and creativity. My academic career was evolving as well. I became program director for a large residency program and was running MIS courses for the community at least monthly. Surgical education became my passion, and I was becoming very aware of the challenges of teaching practicing surgeons and residents the skills required to switch from open to laparoscopic surgery. At this point, I was approached by Dr. Anna Derossis, who was a resident, and she wanted to spend a year in the lab with me, also interested in surgical education. So, working together, we developed an inexpensive box trainer that was built by her husband, Adam. We developed some standardized laparoscopic tasks and a scoring system to measure performance of laparoscopic skills. From that project, which we eventually dubbed MISTELS, we carried out a series of research studies, some of which Mike showed you, to demonstrate the validity of the measures, to compare optical systems and instruments, and to evaluate transfer of training from the simulator to the live animal operating room. I found myself to be even more engaged by educational research than I had been by my basic science research, and I really loved my basic science research. After 15 years in practice, I was ready for a change in a new academic direction. This was an opportunity to bring the scientific training and methodological rigor that I had learned in my bench research to my new passion in surgical education. There was a chance to change the paradigm of teaching procedural skills, rooted in a hands-on experience in simulators and complemented by meaningful measures of performance. Clearly, the work I have done in education has had a much more substantial impact than my contributions at the bench, which did not make it to the David Letterman top 10 list. So this led me to my first encounter with SAGES. To understand this better, let me flash back briefly to my time in Galveston. During my fellowship there, Dr. Thompson invited me to attend the Southern Surgical at the Homestead in Virginia, where he was presenting a paper based in large part on my research in CCK physiology. One evening he had a dinner and I was left on my own, and I knew no one at the Southern, but there was a group of residents from Duke, and they invited me to join them for dinner and for breakfast the next morning. One of those residents is here in the audience by the name of Bruce Shermer. Bruce is, of course, president of SAGES in 2002 and 3. Bruce and I connected at that meeting, and now, but 35 years later, Bruce, we remain great friends. He encouraged me to join SAGES in the early 90s. Perhaps influenced by the bias of my old mentor, I was reluctant, and I did not take Bruce up on his invitation at that time. But fortunately, Bruce was persistent, and he invited me to speak at the educators' lunch at the meeting in 1998. And of course, I gratefully accepted his invitation. And I saw it to be an opportunity for me to disseminate some of the work that we were doing on surgical simulation. So I was going to make Bruce happy, and I was going to be happy. And after witnessing the SAGES phenomenon, I enthusiastically joined that year. Bruce's message to me was clear. If you really want to do something, this is the organization that can make it happen. It is a true meritocracy. If you participate in a committee and you do the work, you can rise in this organization. And I think that message is as meaningful today as ever. There is no organization like SAGES to provide bright young people with an interest in being active and working hard the opportunity to develop their careers and their leadership skills. It is not just to add another committee membership to your CV, it is to expand your opportunities, build relationships, and enhance your own personal and professional impact. It was at this meeting that I first appreciated the distinct culture of this organization. It was unique from any of the meetings I'd ever attended. The energy, openness, and excitement were palpable, and I think all of you that are here can feel that. Everybody was accessible. It was not run by a traditional surgical leadership that was aloof from the members, but was really run on the backs of a group of people who wanted to change the surgical world and were willing to put their energy, heart, and soul to the task. So my first opportunity within SAGES came when I was asked to become involved in the Fundamentals of Laparoscopic Surgery Task Force. That project had been advancing well on the didactic front, but needed something to distinguish itself from some of the other educational offerings at the time. And there was a plan to add a hands-on training program and to embed a rigorous evaluation to verify that those practicing laparoscopic surgery had not just participated in an educational program, but were able to demonstrate that they had acquired the requisite knowledge and skills to practice laparoscopic surgery. I met Lee Swanstrom and Nat Soper and was warmly welcomed as a co-chair. This was an opportunity to bring our MISTELS program to a wider audience as part of FLS. This singular opportunity has opened up doors for me that I could never have expected. My connection with Nat and with Lee and the respect and friendship that has grown out of this relationship has been one of the most enjoyable and fulfilling outcomes of my professional career. I now understand what makes SAGES so special, and I'd just like to talk about three particular values. First, diversity. As any successful business enterprise knows, to be successful in this highly competitive world, one cannot rely on one product alone or one demographic alone. SAGES has evolved over the years, from its roots as a flexible endoscopy society to one that is involved in all aspects of gastrointestinal and abdominal surgery and endoscopy. It covers all facets of diagnostic and therapeutic techniques that apply to the field. SAGES also has a diversity in its membership, in age, gender, social values, and ethnicity of its members. We have evolved from a society mostly involved with surgical technique to one of the leading surgical education societies, and this year with our SAGES SMART initiative, we have brought together anesthesiologists, nurses, and allied health professionals to enhance patient outcomes by addressing the entire trajectory of patient care before, during, and after the operative intervention. By doing so, we have put the patient first and have taken leadership by creating and implementing evidence-based practices to diminish the toll that surgery takes on our patients and to leverage the benefits of our minimally invasive therapies, all with the goal of enhancing recovery after surgery. Ask anyone about SAGES and they will associate our society with surgical innovation. If you want to know where surgery is headed, look to SAGES to find out. At the forefront of flexible endoscopy, laparoscopy, natural orifice surgery, etc., SAGES has been there. The new technology session at our annual meeting is like science fiction. If you want to see the future, you've got to come to SAGES. But we also have to innovate outside the operating room and procedural suites. When it comes to innovation in surgical education, SAGES has also taken ownership of the space. We have an array of educational programs that cannot be equaled by any other surgical society in terms of innovation and quality. There are many examples: SAGES University, Grand Rounds, our extensive video collection, FLS, FES, and FUSE. Our recent development of an entire curriculum to train residents in flexible endoscopy is just another example of our capabilities. That the American Board of Surgery has looked to partner with SAGES to develop high-quality educational programs with links to validated evaluations that verify that the learner has acquired the requisite knowledge and skills is a remarkable accomplishment and compliment to our organization. Engaging youth. SAGES has become the most popular general surgical meeting for our residents without question, and it is the society to which our young surgeons prioritize their academic efforts. Look at the opportunities we provide for committee involvement, not just membership, but involvement. We have committee chairs and board members who are within 10 years of graduation. Our resident courses expose our trainees to the leaders of GI surgery and enable them to network with their peers with whom they're going to work their whole careers. We have also invested in a Career Development Award and an annual workshop on career development. FLS also connected me to major interactions with the American College, ultimately bringing me another set of leadership opportunities, as well as the American Board of Surgery. It wasn't the leadership titles that were important to me, but these connections empowered me to bring my educational efforts to a wider audience and to expand their impact. If not for my opportunities within SAGES and the FLS program, my opportunities to contribute to surgical education and the direction of surgical training for the future would have been restricted to my local environment. At a time where we are being besieged with great upheaval in healthcare and redefining how to best train our residents for the future, SAGES has earned a seat at the table. Within SAGES, a whole bunch of other opportunities came forward, and Michael went through these, and it has unbelievably brought me to this position of president that I would never, ever have anticipated. It was SAGES and our leadership that first advocated for trainees by laying the groundwork for the MIS Fellowship Council that eventually morphed into the Fellowship Council for Advanced Gastrointestinal Surgery. I must give particular thanks to Lee Swanstrom and Adrian Park in particular, who in 2002 invited me to participate with them to develop a framework for the Fellowship Council in order to put order to fellowship training and to advocate for the best interests of the next generation of MIS surgeons. I will backtrack a little bit to bring up a couple of other important episodes in my career that I think are meaningful. My first independent research project after I joined the McGill faculty was accepted for presentation at the Association for Academic Surgeons meeting in San Diego in 1982. I had to select a discussant I had to invite a discussant to discuss my paper, and my work was on estrogen and progesterone receptors and their impact on gallbladder motility. So I asked Dr. Carlos Pellegrini if he would discuss it, and I had never met Carlos before, but I had read that he had done similar research on the pathogenesis of gallstones. Carlos, of course, graciously met with me, reviewed my manuscript, challenged me with his insightful but fair questions. He was really wonderful. We reconnected at SAGES, and he has become a great friend for life. We've spent many wonderful times in each other's homes, and I owe him immense gratitude for so many career opportunities over the past 30 years and for really opening up the international world. I'd like to talk briefly about another connection that arose out of my membership in the Association for Academic Surgeons. I met Joel Roslin. Joel and I shared a research interest in gallstone disease, and he encouraged me to invite the society to meet in Montreal for their annual meeting. Our invitation was accepted, and we had the honor of hosting the meeting in 1992, by chance the year when Joel happened to be president. We became really good friends with him and his wife Priscilla, and Joel invited me to come to Philadelphia and stay in their home and give grand rounds at MCP, where he was chair. And during that visit, I had the chance to connect with one of his faculty members who also shared an interest in surgical education. I had a great hour-long meeting there with someone known as Dr. Ajit Sachdeva. I discussed with him my early work with MISTELS, and I sought his wisdom on metrics. That connection also grew into one of great friendship and respect, and there is no one more pleased than I am to witness his spectacular success as Director of Education of the American College. Well, as my relationships grew, I developed opportunities to see the world and make wonderful new friends. And I wish I had space on the slide to show all of the great friendships that have blossomed from this. One of the most wonderful dividends of participating in societies and connecting with my confrères has been the privilege of seeing the world through their eyes. It is incredibly enriching, and I'm delighted that so many of them are here at SAGES today. I have soaked up the wisdom of the SAGES presidents who preceded me. Steve Wexner, who was president in 2006-07, organized a leadership retreat in Florida to which I was invited. I learned a ton from that experience. I learned more about successful strategic planning than I had in any other educational forum. Although I had attended strategic planning retreats before, for the first time I was able to see it done really well and to truly have an impact by informing the agenda of the society. It is a skill that has helped me a great deal in my current day job. From David Ratner, president in 2004-05, I learned many things. The importance of looking to the future, the trap of being too comfortable in the present, the concept of disruptive technology, and my deep-seated hatred of the Boston Bruins. From each and every one of you, I have absorbed pearls that I carry with me like a necklace every day. I wish I had more time to elaborate on the impact that each and every one of you has had on me. What wonderful role models and genuine friends all of you have been to me. The SAGES meeting for me is not just to see the newest technique or innovation. For me, it is almost a spiritual enlightenment. I return home after each meeting filled with excitement and new ideas for both my clinical and research agendas. I expand my leadership skills and enlarge my network of connections across generations. SAGES gives me a look to the future. It is an aperture on the future of surgery and the very best place to spot upcoming stars. Through SAGES connections, I've had the privilege of inviting the most inspiring visiting professors to motivate our residents and to provide unique opportunities for the career developments of our residents, fellows, and young faculty. So what will the SAGES annual meeting look like in 5 or 10 years? Will evolution and digital communication make such in-person gatherings anachronistic? I hope not. Although I recognize that time away from home and work is always going to be a challenge, there is no substitute for in-person meetings. Personal connections provide opportunities for random encounters and introductions that will lead to unanticipated consequences. They provide you FaceTime, a chance to read body language and to make your own first impressions, to discover mutual interests and to be directed in unexpected trajectories. More important to me, they lead to friendships and relationships that are the basis of what makes human socialization so enriching. As I said at the start, these opportunities to establish connections do not happen by serendipity. You have the chance to make them happen. SAGES has established a culture whereby barriers have been eliminated and opportunities to connect have been enabled. Seize that opportunity. I hope that each of you will reach out to meet at least one new person outside your comfort zone during this meeting. Look into their eyes and ask them sincerely about what they do. Share with them your passions. There is no greater opportunity than that afforded by a human connection. We are privileged to lead the lives we do. Take full advantage of the options offered to you. Become active in your specialty societies, hopefully SAGES, and embrace the opportunity to make a difference. In closing, I would like to thank some people who've been so important to me, both professionally and personally. I must thank the SAGES exec. It's been a fantastic year. Each of you has worked so hard on behalf of SAGES, and we've also had the chance to have some great fun together. I know the future of the organization is in great hands under Mike's leadership. Tanya and Jeff, you've put together a fantastic program for the meeting. I want to thank you for your hard work, your good judgment, and your consideration. I know has been a challenging task balancing all the requests to be on the program, and you've been masterful and truly a delight to work with. Sally, I will miss the weekly calls every Monday. You bring so much to SAGES. your personality, work ethic, energy, and diplomacy, but you have taught me so very much, and I thank you for the bottom of my heart. This picture was taken at McGill in May 1985, and it brings together three of the professional influences who made a great impact on my early career. Dave Mulder, the tall redhead, to my right, is a cardiothoracic surgeon, and he gave me my first glimpse at the awesome world of surgery when he invited me to observe an open heart operation in 1969. That summer, as a student in physiology, I had the fortune to get a summer job in his lab. Dave has been a role model, a mentor, and most importantly, a great friend for more than 40 years. When he later became chair of surgery at McGill, Dave hired me to my first and only academic job. Although he's not here at SAGES today, I know that he is as excited as I am by this honor. To your left of Dave in this picture is Dr. James C. Thompson. Dr. Thompson, as you know, is department chair and ran one of the leading GI hormone research labs in the world. From him, I learned not only physiology, but the discipline of scientific inquiry and the responsibility of surgeons to advance our practice through research and innovation. And although my personal research has evolved from GI physiology to education and simulation, I've tried to follow his example in my own academic career and to pass this approach on to my students. Sadly, Jim passed away in 2008, and I'm sorry he could not be here today. But I do know that, in his latter years, he recognized the importance of SAGES to the advancement of GI surgery. Karen and I had the chance to spend some quality time with Jim in Galveston shortly before he died, and I know he would be very, very proud to see me here today. Fraser Gerd, seen on the far left of this picture, was chair of surgery before my time. I never actually worked with him, but I did speak to him often. He was a quiet and kind man and admired in academic circles. He emphasized the importance of the surgeon-scientist and always encouraged our faculty to get involved in academic specialty societies. But he told me to bring Karen with me to these meetings wherever possible. He said that it is important for her to understand what I do and to know the people with whom I interact at this level. And those of you who know me well can attest that I have taken his advice to heart about bringing Karen into my society world. I need to say a very special word of thanks to my partners at McGill, Leanne, Lorenzo, and Melina. Each of them has started as my student and have now become my teacher. They're remarkable surgeons, academics, and nobody could ask for better friends. Of all that I have achieved academically, there is nothing more important to me or fulfilling than watching my former students develop into such outstanding surgeons and people. I'm incredibly blessed to have them on my team, and I thank you for carrying me and supporting me, particularly in this very busy year. We have a big MIS team at McGill. Each of them is amazing, dedicated, and talented, an exemplary teacher, and a wonderful person. Their hard work has supported me and allowed me to spend the time that I needed to grow personally and professionally. And many of them are here to share the moment with me, and I thank you. Each paper or presentation that I've given on behalf of McGill over the past 20 years was made possible mostly by the efforts done by a series of residents, fellows, and students with whom I've had the privilege to work. They have been our best ambassadors, and I know the future is bright in their hands. Our team is supported by an incredible group of dedicated and talented people from nursing, research, teaching, and administrative aspects. Most of you are here today. You've been by my side forever, and I thank you. This is a picture of Mike Brent, our annual MIS visiting professor last fall at McGill with several of our team. The bridge between my professional and personal lives is my assistant, Maria Cortese. She's like family and has taken care of my work side professionally, patiently, and with the requisite sense of humor for 14 years. Many of you have probably communicated with Maria, and Maria, thank you so much for everything you do to keep me on track. Well, let me introduce you to my parents, and I hope they're watching by webcast, Sam and Pauline. They're back in Montreal, and although they're not here in person, I know they're rooting for me. They have always shown confidence in me, supported my aspirations, and provided me a moral compass to guide me. I send them my heartfelt thanks and love. They've taught me everything I know, and this is a picture of them celebrating their 61st anniversary in our home a few years ago. My in-laws were like another set of parents to me. Not only did they share their wonderful daughter Karen with me, but they welcomed me as a son into their family. Karen and I miss them greatly and know how very proud they would have been to witness this day. In this picture on your left is my beautiful daughter, Kimberly. She is here in the audience today, and I'm really delighted that she has the chance to share with me in person this very important milestone in my life. On my right are my son, Howard, and his wife, Karen, who are also here to support me. I'm extraordinarily proud of how they've developed as wonderful, warm people and as fantastic parents. I hope that each of you will get a chance to meet with them today so you can see why I'm so very proud. Well, this is my granddaughter, Olivia. Some of you have had a chance to meet her. She's now over 3 years old. So as proud as I am of my children, to tell you the truth right now, Olivia gets most of the attention. This little thing has brought such indescribable joy to our lives. My family teaches me to keep things in perspective and to keep my feet on the ground. Well, what can I say about Karen? We will be celebrating our 42nd anniversary this June. She's been with me every step of the way. She is my partner in life. She is an amazing mother and grandmother, and she lives by a standard of values that few can match. Many of you know her, I think. I hope that those who have not yet met her will have a chance to introduce yourself, perhaps at the sing-off tonight. I owe her so very, very much, and just want to thank her publicly for her wisdom, support, and devotion. Without this, I would not have accomplished even a small percentage of what I have, much less have had the joy in my life and accomplishments, and I certainly would not be on the podium today. So thank you. This has been the most meaningful recognition that I've received in my career. I have been extraordinarily blessed in my personal and professional lives. Thank you all for giving me the privilege to be your president over the past year. As they say in French, chapeau. Hats off to all of you who make SAGES such a distinct society. Thank you.
Jerry, thank you for sharing lessons on what is and continues to be a truly remarkable surgical career and life. And on behalf of SAGES, I'd like to present you with this plaque, which first begins with this quote from John Quincy Adams. If your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, you are a leader. To the SAGES president, April 2013 to 14, Gerald M. Freed, MD, with gratitude for your imagination, logic, and energetic leadership of SAGES, presented by the Society of American Gastrointestinal and Endoscopic Surgeons.
Thank you, Michael. Very special.